What has happened to the fast casual sector? Hello, and welcome to The Week in Restaurants, a look at the top stories of the week in the restaurant industry. I'm Jonathan Mays, editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business Magazine, and I am here with executive editor Lisa Jennings. Chili's did it again last quarter. We will talk about the incredible run that company is on. Subway is sending cash to its franchisees, and we will talk about what that means for the brand and its operators. Later on Tech Check, senior tech editor Joe Guszkowski talks about personalization. But first, Lisa Jennings, I thought the fast casual sector was immune to all of these economic issues. What the hell is happening?
Yes, it seems like the bad economic situation has finally hit fast casual, which last year was kind of the safe place to be. People were feeling pretty good in fast casual. But this, at least in the second quarter, it has taken a bit of a turn. You know, in some cases, it has to do with the it has to do with the macroeconomic climate, consumers just being more concerned about value. But in some of the cases, it also has to do with some things that are specific to brands, like Sweetgreen, for example, was pretty open about saying it has had some operational challenges and has had some operational challenges for a while that they're trying to fix. You know, Noodles also is going through a bit of some stuff. But what's interesting about it to me is that it really is, you know, it ties in a bit to the Chili's success, which is, you know, Chili's, one of the reasons why it's doing so well is because it successfully convinced consumers that it was as good a deal, perhaps, as even quick service. And so it really has kind of changed the whole focus on value and what qualifies as a good value within each segment. You know, QSR is now doing all these $5 meals. Fast casual now, you know, is if Chili's is doing a $10.99 value meal, you know, then Sweetgreen has to compete with that, which is as opposed to competing with Chipotle or, you know, one of its peers, which is kind of interesting. So I think we're just seeing, you know, folks being a little nervous about spending because of tariffs, because of everything else going on. And they're, you know, making some choices in their buying.
Yeah. I think the issue here, first off, it's not a second quarter thing. This slowdown started in the first quarter, without any question. You have, Sweetgreen slowed from 4% in the fourth quarter to negative 3% in the first quarter of this year. Cava slowed from 21.2 to 10.8 between the fourth quarter and the first quarter. Chipotle slowed down between 5.4% and negative 0.4%, basically flat. Pretty much the entire sector saw a slowdown. Wingstop slowed down quite a bit. Shake Shack slowed down quite a bit. It was relatively rare when they didn't. My issue on the fast casual sector, frankly, on this one is we've heard from pretty much everybody in the fast food world really largely blaming this on the low-income consumer. And I have concerns with that. I don't think this is just a low-income consumer problem. If we're seeing this issue, and we'll just highlight Sweetgreen, for instance. If you're seeing Sweetgreen slow down to the extent that it is, and its sales, same-store sales in the second quarter were down well over 7%.
7.6.
A significant slowdown in their same-store sales in the second quarter. Sweetgreen, I'm sorry, does not have a lot of low-income consumers. It just doesn't.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it has a few, don't get me wrong, but that suggests to me that there's something else going on and that it is a broader set of consumers that are cutting back. I mean, Chipotle does have probably more lower income consumers. It is a very large brand. At some point, you need to have a low income consumer to get a certain amount of growth, but that's not their base either. That slowdown is a little bit concerning as well, you know, and the same is true actually for Cava. Now, I'll say that on a 2-year basis, Cava actually accelerated in the second quarter, but still, it really speaks to me that there is a broader economic malaise that is spreading from fast food to fast casual, and that this malaise is essentially a consumer that is saying, all right, we are concerned about prices that we're paying at these restaurant chains. And by the way, I hear it all the time.
Right.
I hear it actually ad nauseum because, you know, I'm on TikTok and I post a lot of TikToks and I post a lot of Twitter posts. And I can tell you without fail, somebody brings up the value equation and prices. I just really think that you have some real concerns about the state of the consumer. They don't like the prices they're paying and they're cutting back. They're concerned probably about their jobs. They might be a little bit concerned about tariffs. The climate right now is just really divisive. There are deep concerns with the Hispanic community. So we do hear one thing that's it's not really talked about all that much for the most part is what is happening in areas with a heavy population of people who were born in Mexico. That particular group was specifically cited for issues with Jack in a Box. So the fact of the matter is we have a climate that's just not friendly, at least to limited service chains. And I think that consumers think that limited service chains are supposed to have lower prices than what they're seeing.
And better quality.
Yeah. Well,
it's interesting that in Cava's case, Cava refers to this as the fog. He talked about it as being a fog, but they aren't seeing people trade down. I mean, Brett Schulman is saying they're still seeing people add on pita chips. They're still seeing the premium steak, product being bought, but sales overall are down. I think it's more that people just aren't going out as much. I mean, the people who are going out are probably behaving much, at least the people with, higher income. But, I think that's certainly a factor. And, I think you also have people looking for value in ways that have to do with portion sizes. Portions have just become such an important word. And the chains seem to be going two different directions. Either they're going really heavy on portions. That's what Sweetgreen's answer is, to increase the amount of chicken and tofu that they're serving in bowls by 25%. They really want to try to make people feel like they're getting a good value. This is kind of echoing Chipotle's problem that they had last year and still have. And so and then you're seeing noodles going for smaller portions, perhaps going for the people on Ozempic that, and that offering a better value. But it's a difficult place for chain restaurants to be in, given that, their food costs are going up too. So they're dealing with, how can they present something as a good value to people?
Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult environment. I mean, without any question. And I think that operators are in a tough spot. Now, one thing I want to note is that if you do listen to fast food executives, they do say that people within fast food are trading down. They're ordering more value. They are taking steps to limit what they're buying. So that is definitely happening in the fast food. I mean, in the fast food sector. I mean, the real unusual issue, and this pretty much kind of flows into the Chili's talk. What's really unusual about this environment is historically fast food chains in particular should be benefiting from this. And that's really what has been, and that's been true for now 2 years. This should be a friendly environment for McDonald's, for Burger King, for Wendy's, Taco Bell's doing fine. And they're just about the only one, at least outside the beverage sector, where Dutch Bros is just doing really well. And it's that to me is still mind boggling. There should be a set of consumers that are saying, I'm going to fast food, and they're not. And that's what's bothering me. That's probably what bothers me more than anything else. That to me says the consumer does not believe fast food is the value that it used to be. That they don't like the prices that they're paying at fast food. And we've had a year in which fast food has been unleashing all kinds of value, probably the most extensive value war we've seen in years, really maybe since the Great Recession. And it's not generating the traffic at fast food restaurants. It is only maintaining traffic, maybe. So you might be getting consumers that are ordering on the value, but they're just not coming at other times unless there's some sort of promotion that draws them there.
Right.
I mean, it's an odd situation.
The ones in fast casual, like, Cava talks and has been talking for the past couple of years about its everyday value. They deliberately did kind of undercut pricing, or at least they didn't raise their prices as much as other competitors in fast casual did over the past 2 years or so. And so they're benefiting from that in a way. But Potbelly too. Potbelly actually had a pretty good second quarter. And they, rather than doing real meal deals, like you're seeing in QSR, they just did their sort of their skinny value meals, which really seemed to resonate with people. It was just seen as a good deal. It was enough food and it seemed to be working with them. And so there's that whole argument about whether or not you can buy sales with these discounts. And I think there's some out there who are kind of proving that maybe that's not the way to go.
Right. Well, the challenge though, so we get back to just Chili's reported 24% comps. And on a 2-year basis, nearly 40%. That's like, I mean, again, I've said before, like this is just this is just a really extreme environment. And Chili's performance is very well is probably example A. I mean, they're just discounting. Effectively, if we're saying now, like, look, Chili's, what's going on at Chili's is more than just a $10.99 meal. It was the cheese pull thing. They've done operations improvements, and I think the consumer wants more for their money. We talk about the value for the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think consumers just now look at this and they think that Chili's is cheaper. I really do. I think they're buying into the social media thing that Chili's is cheaper. It is ish. It isn't. Not really. You can go to McDonald's and you fill in the blank. You can go to McDonald's, you can go to KFC, you can go to Burger King, and you can eat a lot cheaper. But you're still talking about effectively Chili's buying sales. It's the same as Applebee's with the 2 for $25. They're still buying sales. It's like,
yeah. But Chili's kind of addressed that by saying, for those people who would kind of point to it's all about their social media. We'll see if he can fix Maggiano's now with the same playbook. But when Kevin Hochman came into Chili's, he really improved the food, though. I mean, that was the first step of this turnaround, was that he went in and operationally fixed a lot of things in the restaurants and just kind of improved the food. It was a lot of the same sort of things, but still, that was the big part of it. People aren't just getting, cheap food. It was better, cheap food.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they've made improvements to the food. Their marketing is spectacular. It's absolutely on point right now. It's a very marketing friendly company, and they took advantage of, they saw that frustration with consumers on fast food, and they took full advantage, and that helped launch it. And, and then, you have the good operations inside your restaurants, and you get customers there. It's just not really rocket surgery. You have to have the foundation. If you're going to do anything, you have to be ready for it in case it happens. And, you can do all the marketing you want, but if customers go into your restaurant and they have a bad experience, it's absolutely pointless. But it's just an odd environment right now. But, Chili's killing it. Full service brands are actually performing relatively well. And I think a lot of that is a lot of these brands have adopted the same playbook. They might be doing things a little bit differently here and there in terms of what their marketing is. But I think the consumer is starting to kind of realize, hey, wait a minute, let's go and, if we're going to spend some money, let's get what we want out of this. And I think
so tell me what's happening at Subway, Jonathan. So, and speaking of QSR, what's going on with Subway?
Yeah. Subway has just sent a bunch of cash to its franchisees. Now, the issue is a little bit complicated, but, and it is actually rooted in the switch in their beverage contract. So they used to have a contract with Coke. They switched it recently to Pepsi. The provisions in those deals are fascinating because under the old deal with Coke, it was franchisees who would be responsible for maintaining the machines that they use, the drink machines and whatnot. Coke would send them cash they would send rebates to the franchisees to pay for, ostensibly to pay for the upkeep of those machines. But that was cash into franchisees' accounts. Under the Pepsi contract, Pepsi pays for all of that. So Pepsi takes care of it, which is a good thing, ultimately, I think. But that means that franchisees get less cash. And so they just understanding, or at least this is what they're saying, understanding that franchisees need as much cash as they can get. They told franchisees last week, and then they've just done this, that they are going to send a rebate. Subway is going to send a rebate to franchisees equal to 10% of their average weekly sales from the first 6 months of the year. So it's not a lot of money.
Roughly 700 to 1,000, something like that.
Yeah, I will say I did get, I do have a source now telling me, effectively updating it a little bit to 800 to 1,000 on average, which is right around what I thought. If you look at their average unit volumes from the first half of the year, it was, or from last year, was in $490,000 per location, which if you do the math, accounted for roughly about 900. So 800 to 1,000 makes as much sense as anything else. So it's not a ton, but it's something. It's not going to keep a store from closing, but it speaks to me of the issue affecting Subway, which is, they have low unit volumes. Their sales have been hit just like everybody else's. And, when you have a brand that has low unit volumes like that, and you have a franchisee base that's already sort of teetering on the edge of whatever, they need as much help as they can get. And, it's not really, as I said, it's not going to help. It's not really going to keep stores from closing. Not really. If you're in danger of closing, an $800 check is not going to help.
Right. But as my father used to say, it's better than a kick in the head.
It is better than a kick in the head. So it's at the very least a really good gesture on the part of current management. And that's just something that brand needs as much as possible. So they did hint at a number of other things that might be happening. They said it's part of a broad effort to try to fix profitability on the part of franchisees and stuff like that. They've got a lot to do. I don't think they've got a lot more to do. I think that they need to make a number of different changes. I don't think that's any secret whatsoever. That's what's going on at Subway. We'll see how that goes. But if you close 7,500 units in a decade-long period, you got some work to do, which is what happened with Subway. Do you ever eat Subway, Lisa?
You know what? We used to eat it a lot more often when my boys were playing soccer. It was our go-to soccer lunch back in the day.
Yeah. I am still a fan of Subway and definitely want to see those stores stay open. All right. Coming up later in the podcast, we have Joe Guszkowski. We'll talk about personalization. But first, whatever ad Spoons throws on the podcast next.
Are you looking for a new podcast that provides practical tips for running your restaurant business? Do you want to hear from the food service world's most influential decision makers? Then go subscribe to my podcast, Takeaway with Sam Okus, which features everyone from the CEOs of the biggest restaurant chains to the leaders of small but mighty emerging brands. At the end of each interview, I provide my takeaways from the discussion, giving you actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Go subscribe to Takeaway with Sam Okus wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Tech Check, where I, Joe Guszkowski, talk really fast about one big topic in restaurant tech. This week, what if every customer could feel like a regular? It could be the next billion-dollar question for restaurant technology. Restaurants have spent the past 5 years adopting digital ordering. Now they're starting to make use of all that customer data. Many are testing more personalized marketing strategies that allow them to target offers to likely purchasers, while others are using AI to power smarter menu recommendations online. There's also been an effort by tech suppliers to integrate online reservations data into the on-premise experience. Soon, your server may know your name and your food preferences before you even sit down. The goal ultimately is to make customers feel like regulars, even if they've only visited once or twice, and hopefully they'll come back. The industry is still in the early stages of making this happen. We're still years behind online retail, where this sort of thing has long been part of the playbook. But more personalization certainly feels like the next logical step in restaurants' digital transformation.
And that should do it for The Week in Restaurants, which was edited, as always, by Spoons, artwork by Nico Hines. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at restaurantbusinessonline.com. But by all means, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For Lisa Jennings, I'm Jonathan Mays, editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.